The test that shattered our family. I didn't know it then, but the moment I clicked submit on that DNA kit would be the last quiet moment my family ever had. It was a plain Sunday morning at 8:12 a.m. Rain tapping the window, my coffee turning cold, nothing unusual at all. Funny how ordinary life feels right before it breaks. I only took the test because everyone else online was doing it. At least, that's what I told myself. But the truth? I'd been carrying this strange tug in my chest for years. Like something about my place in the world didn't click. Like my life was slightly misaligned and I couldn't explain why. The results came in on a Thursday night at 9:41 p.m. I was brushing my teeth when the notification popped up. I opened the app right there in the bathroom, barely wiping my mouth. I expected random percentages, maybe a heritage surprise I could laugh about with my mom later. But instead, the screen showed a message I'd never seen before. We found immediate family matches you might not recognize. My stomach twisted. I clicked. A man's name appeared. A 63-year-old. Someone I'd never heard of in my life. Paternal match. 99.97%. I stared until the screen dimmed. Refreshed the page. Refreshed it again. Still there. My dad, the man who raised me, the man whose eyes I always thought I had, didn't appear anywhere. Not even as a distant match. I felt like the ground shifted under me. My toothbrush slipped from my hand and clattered into the sink. I slid down to the bathroom floor, tile cold against my legs, and just sat there trying to breathe through the roar in my ears. At 10:17 p.m., I whispered, "This has to be a mistake," but I didn't believe it. I should have called my parents. I didn't. I couldn't. Not when my voice felt like it would crack apart. I hardly slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that stranger's name.
Markus Hale.
And that number. That impossible number. By Friday morning, I couldn't stand not knowing. I drove to my parents' house without warning. 42 minutes alone with my thoughts felt like 42 hours. When I walked in, Mom was cooking eggs, humming softly. Dad was reading the paper. It was so normal, so painfully normal, that I almost turned around and left. "Hey, sweetie," Mom called. "You're early. Want breakfast?" I just stood there in the doorway staring. Dad lowered the paper. "Everything okay?" I opened my mouth, closed it, tried again. "I took a DNA test." Mom's spatula froze midair. Dad's face tightened so fast it was like a flash of lightning. There and gone. But I saw it. Panic. Recognition. "What did it say?" Mom asked too casually. My voice shook. "It said Dad isn't biologically related to me." They both flinched. Dad's chair scraped the floor. Mom covered her mouth. The silence that followed felt thick enough to choke on. Finally, Dad whispered, "We were going to tell you someday." Felt like a punch. "What?" Mom stepped toward me, eyes glassy. "Honey, we had to use IVF. It wasn't easy for us. You know your father had low motility. That doesn't explain this." I snapped. "Did you use donor sperm?" "No," she said quickly.
No.
"They used your father's sample. We watched them. We were right there when—" She swallowed the rest of her sentence like it burned. Dad closed his eyes. "We think the clinic made a mistake." My knees nearly gave out. I sank into a chair, trying to process words that didn't make sense. "You're telling me the clinic mixed up the samples? And you never checked?" Mom's voice cracked. "We were afraid of hurting you. You protected me from the truth," I said. "Not the damage." For a moment, none of us spoke. Then I asked the question that had been eating me alive since I saw that name on my phone. "Do you know who my biological father is?" Mom hesitated. Dad's jaw clenched. Finally, she whispered, "His name is Marcus Hale." The air left my lungs. That was the name. The exact name the DNA report gave me. So they had known. Maybe not everything, but something. I stood up, keys trembling in my hand. "I'm finding out the rest. With or without your help." I walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" Mom asked, voice shaking. to figure out who I am. I stepped outside, and before I reached my car, my phone buzzed. A new notification from the DNA app. New message from Marcus Hale. My hands went numb. I opened it, and what he wrote changed everything. The message from Marcus Hale sat on my lock screen like a ticking bomb. I didn't open it right away. For a moment, I just stood there in my parents' driveway, cold air biting at my skin, rain starting to dot the pavement. My heartbeat was loud enough that I swear I could hear it echoing in my ears. I stared at my phone, telling myself to breathe, but my hands were shaking too much to even swipe the screen. What do you say to the man whose DNA you apparently share? Someone who didn't know you existed? Someone who wasn't supposed to be your father, yet somehow is? After a long, shaky breath, I finally tapped the notification. His message popped up, short and unsettlingly calm. I think we need to talk. Just 11 words, but they hit harder than anything my parents said inside that house. I stared at his profile photo, the same one I'd seen the night before when the match first appeared. A man with light brown eyes, tired ones, the kind that held years of something heavy. His hair was gray at the temples, neatly trimmed. He could have been anyone. A stranger on a bus. A man in line at the grocery store. Someone you forget 3 minutes after seeing him. But he was tied to me by 99.97%. I typed and deleted at least 10 different replies. Every word felt wrong. Too formal. Too emotional. Too desperate. Finally, I wrote, I got my DNA results last night. I didn't expect this. What do you know? I hovered over send for almost a full minute before I finally tapped it. It felt like throwing a stone into a bottomless well. He replied 60 seconds later. Not here. Can we talk on the phone? My stomach lurched. A phone call felt too real, too immediate. But texting wasn't enough. Not for something like this. Okay. I typed. Call me. The phone rang almost instantly. I nearly dropped it. I forced myself to answer. His voice was quiet, gravelly, older. Is this her? I didn't know what to call myself in that moment. His daughter? A stranger? A mistake? It's me, I said softly. There was a long pause, long enough that I almost checked if the call dropped. Then he exhaled shakily. I've been waiting for this for years. My breath caught. You knew. He laughed, but it was a bitter, broken sound.
No.
I didn't know about you. I knew something went wrong back then, but not this. Not you. I walked toward my car but didn't get in. I leaned against the door, rain dripping onto my hair, the world around me blurring out. What do you mean something went wrong? He hesitated again. Listen, I don't want to overwhelm you, but 30 years ago my wife and I went to a clinic. Same one as your parents, I'm guessing. They told us everything went normally, but the pregnancy failed. And after that, we got a letter. My pulse spiked. A letter. It said the clinic believed there had been a mislabeling incident. They claimed it probably happened after our procedure, not before. They apologized. Said they were doing an internal review. They insisted no pregnancies were impacted. Rain was pouring harder now, but I could barely feel it. So they lied. They lied, he said quietly. And we couldn't prove anything. My wife was devastated. Truly broken. We ended up divorcing a few years later. She couldn't live with the what-ifs. And his voice cracked for the first time. I kept thinking, what if my child is out there somewhere? What if I lost them and didn't even know their name? My throat tightened. And now you think that child is me. I don't think, he said softly. I know. I didn't realize I was crying until a drop hit my hand and it wasn't rain. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel, I whispered. I know, he said. I'm not calling to take anything from you. Not your parents. Not your life. I want to understand what happened. I sucked in a slow breath. My parents said the clinic made a mistake. I believe them, he replied. But there's more to it. And it's worse than you think. A cold shock ran through me. What do you mean? He hesitated long enough that I heard him pacing, the creak of a floorboard, a faint breath like he was bracing himself. Your parents aren't the only ones. My ex-wife isn't the only one. There were multiple cases, quiet settlements, lost records, things they buried. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. So the clinic covered it up? Yes, he said. And they got away with it. I pushed a hand through my wet hair. Every second of this conversation felt like another piece of my life unraveling. Why contact me now? You matched with me, he said gently. And if you matched, someone else might too. Someone from the clinic. Someone who doesn't want this getting out. A chill ran down my spine. What does that mean? He didn't answer right away. When he finally did, his voice was low, serious, nothing like before. I've been contacted already. Private number. They warned me not to pursue old matters. I thought it was just harassment. But after your match came in, Marcus, I whispered. Are you saying someone is trying to stop us from finding the truth? I'm saying, he replied, that 30-year-old secrets don't stay buried on their own. I felt like the world tilted beneath me. The rain blurred everything. Cars passing in the distance. The lights of my parents' house glowing behind me. And suddenly, I wasn't just a woman with unexpected DNA results. I was part of a story someone had fought hard to erase. He took a deep breath. Listen, I need to tell you something else, but I'd rather say it in person. It's important. What is it? My voice shook. I know who else was at the clinic the same day as your parents, he said. Someone who shouldn't have been there. Someone the clinic never told anyone about. Who? I whispered, but he didn't get the chance to answer. A sharp sound hit the line like a door slamming. Footsteps. A muffled voice. Marcus inhaled sharply. Marcus? Hello? Nothing. Just rustling. A thud. And then, the call disconnected. I stared at my phone, rain running down my face like tears, and then my screen lit up again. A new message. Unknown number. Stop digging. This isn't your concern. My breath froze. Someone knew. Someone was watching. Someone didn't want me to find out who I really was. I stood in the rain long after the call ended, staring at that anonymous message like it was carved into my skin. Stop digging. 3 words that shouldn't have meant anything, but somehow felt like a threat aimed straight at my chest. I looked back at my parents' house. Warm lights glowing through the windows, and for the first time in my life, it felt like a place that belonged to someone else. I got into my car and shut the door, the sudden silence making everything feel too real. My phone buzzed again. I jumped, heart pounding, but it was just another message from the DNA app. Your father has not responded. Try again later. Father. I stared at the word until it blurred. Who did that mean now? The man who raised me? Or the man who vanished mid-call with someone in the background? I tried calling Marcus back. Straight to voicemail. His greeting was short, almost rushed. This is Marcus. Leave a message. No hint of the man who had spoken to me less than 10 minutes ago. I didn't know what to say, so I hung up. For a few minutes, I sat there gripping the steering wheel so tightly my hands ached. My thoughts were a mess. Half fear, half disbelief, and this strange ache I couldn't name. I didn't know anything about this man. Not what he liked, not what he hated, not what he sounded like when he laughed. And yet something in me felt tethered to him now. Like a door had opened I didn't even know existed. My phone buzzed again. Mom. I ignored it. Then Dad called. I ignored that too. I couldn't face them. Not yet. Not with their version of the story barely holding together and mine collapsing under my feet. I drove aimlessly for a while, letting the roads decide for me. My brain kept replaying the noise I heard before the call dropped. A door, footsteps, that muffled voice. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe he dropped his phone. Maybe the connection was bad. Maybe paranoia was creeping in because everything else was already upside down. But then that unknown number. That message. This isn't your concern. A part of me wanted to throw my phone out the window. Another part wanted to call the number back and scream. Instead, I parked in an empty lot behind a closed strip mall and just existed for a minute. Rain tapped against the windshield like impatient fingers. I finally worked up the courage to text Marcus. "Are you okay? What happened?" No reply. 2 minutes passed. 5, 10. Nothing. My chest tightened. I knew I shouldn't panic. He was a stranger. But the fear came anyway. I'd been alive 30 years without him, and suddenly the idea of him being gone felt wrong. I didn't understand it, but the feeling was there, heavy and certain. I wiped my eyes, frustrated with myself for crying again. I didn't even know who I was crying for. When my phone buzzed, I nearly dropped it. But it wasn't Marcus. It was another unknown number. A different one. "If you want answers, stop talking to him." My breath caught. A second message came instantly, almost like they were watching me read it. "You're looking in the wrong place. Start with your parents." I stared at the screen, heart pounding so loudly it felt like a physical force. Whoever this was, they didn't want Marcus involved. And the worst part? They didn't sound like they were guessing. They sounded like they knew something. I sat there in the dark parking lot, rain hammering the roof, my life splitting into two versions, before the test and after. And in that moment, a terrifying thought slid into my mind so quietly. So suddenly, I almost gasped aloud. What if my parents weren't telling me the whole truth? What if the clinic wasn't the only one hiding something? I didn't go home that night. Couldn't. Every time I thought about walking back into my parents' house, my chest tightened until I could barely breathe. So I drove to a 24-hour diner instead, the kind with flickering neon lights and the smell of burnt coffee that clings to your clothes. It was almost midnight, and the few people inside looked like they were hiding from something too. Maybe I fit right in. I slid into a booth, ordered coffee I wouldn't drink, and stared at my phone like it might explain what was happening to me. 2 unknown numbers. 2 warnings. Marcus disappearing mid-call. My parents' half-truths. And a 30-year-old mistake that apparently wasn't a mistake at all. I kept replaying the second message. Start with your parents. It felt like someone whispering over my shoulder. Around 12:43 a.m., I finally caved and called my mom. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. She answered on the second ring, voice raw from crying. "Honey, please come home. We're worried." I almost softened, but then everything surged back at once. "I need to ask you something," I said, and my voice came out colder than I expected. "Anything," she whispered. "Did you know about him?" Silence. Not confusion. Not surprise. A silence that meant yes. "Mom," I said, "did you know about Marcus Hale before yesterday?" The tiniest exhale. "Sweetheart, please come home. We can talk in person." "No," I said. "We're talking now." I heard her hand cover the receiver, muffled whispers. Then my father's voice in the background telling her something I couldn't make out. When she came back, her voice was trembling. "I didn't know for sure. But you suspected." Another silence. "Mom," I pressed. "You suspected." She broke. "Yes." I closed my eyes. My whole body felt like it was vibrating. "How long? Please. How long?" Her voice cracked. "Since you were 5. The diner around me dissolved. The clinking dishes, the buzzing lights, the quiet hum of strangers' conversations. It all fell away until it was just me and the sound of my mother sobbing on the other end of the line. 5. I whispered. "I was 5 and you thought I didn't belong to Dad?" "We didn't want to believe it," she said. "We convinced ourselves the clinic had corrected everything. We convinced ourselves you were his. We loved you so much, that we didn't want to break anything." I felt something hot rise up in me. Anger, betrayal, grief all tangled together. "You let me grow up believing a lie. We didn't know how to tell you," she whispered. "We thought it would destroy you." "It's destroying me now," I said. She let out a broken sob, and for a moment I almost felt guilty. But then I remembered the years of confusion, the strange disconnect I always felt without knowing why. They saw it too. They saw it and never said a word. When I spoke again, my voice was barely audible. You said you were in the room when they used Dad's sample. We were, she said. Then how did this happen? Her breathing hitched. Because there was a moment we weren't. I sat forward. What do you mean? She sniffed, trying to hold herself together. They asked us to step out while they prepared things. It was quick, maybe 2 minutes. They said it was standard procedure. We didn't think anything of it. My stomach dropped. And you think that's when? We don't know, she cried. We never knew. I pressed my fingers to my temples, trying to hold onto something stable. But everything felt slippery, shifting. Why didn't you ask the clinic? I said. Why didn't you demand answers? We did, she whispered. They denied everything. They said any concerns were simply parental anxiety. And you believed them? We were young, scared. IVF was still so new back then. The doctors made us feel like we were overreacting, like we'd be risking your future if we made trouble. I shook my head. So you said nothing? We said nothing, she echoed. My throat tightened. And Dad? Did he know I wasn't his? A long pause. Then, your father refused to accept it. He said you were his no matter what. He didn't want a test. He didn't want answers. He wanted you. I looked down at the cold coffee in front of me, swirling in its cup like something dead. I don't know who I am anymore, I whispered. Oh, sweetheart, you're ours. You always will be. But those words felt too small now, too fragile. I'm coming home, I said finally. But if you're hiding anything else, you need to tell me. All of it. We will, she promised. I hung up, slid out of the booth, and walked out into the cool night air. The rain had stopped, but the world still felt wet, heavy. I'd barely made it to my car when another text came through, from the first unknown number. You shouldn't have called her. My breath caught. Then a second message. We warned you. Now things get harder. I froze in the parking lot, phone glowing in my hand, heart slamming against my ribs. Someone was watching me, and they knew exactly who I had talked to. By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway, it was almost 2 a.m. Their house, my childhood home, looked different now. Smaller, dimmer, like the truth had stripped something out of it. The porch light flickered once, then steadied, casting a pale cone across the wet pavement. My mom opened the door before I even knocked. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy, but she tried to smile. I stepped inside without saying anything, the warmth of the house hitting me all at once, familiar and suffocating. My dad stood in the living room, arms crossed, jaw clenched so tight the muscle twitched. He looked older than he had yesterday. Smaller too. Come sit, he said. I didn't. I need answers. My mom rubbed her hands together, a nervous habit she had when she cooked Thanksgiving dinner or waited for medical results. We'll tell you everything. We promise. No more promises, I said quietly. Just the truth. Dad glanced at Mom before nodding toward the dining table. A thick folder sat on it. Not new. Old. Edges frayed. Paper yellowed. Something they'd kept hidden for years. He said. Mom pushed the folder toward me with trembling fingers. These are the records from the clinic. I opened it. Appointment slips, consent forms, lab notes. Some typed, others handwritten. But even without reading the details, I could feel something wrong in the pages. Something sloppy, rushed, careless. The first thing that stood out was the date. You said the procedure was on June 18th, I said. Mom nodded. It was. I slid a slip of paper toward her. This says June 21st. She frowned. What? That can't be right. Dad leaned in, adjusting his glasses. That's not what they told us. I dug deeper. Another document, a lab log, had a correction scribbled over Dad's patient ID. Not crossed out neatly. Someone had taken a pen and scratched over the number until the paper nearly tore, then wrote a new one above it. This is sloppy as hell, I said. Who even did this? Mom clasped her hands. They told us they were switching to a new system. They said there might be duplicates or mistakes in the paperwork. The paperwork? I looked up sharply. Mom, this isn't a typo. This looks like someone trying to hide something. Dad swallowed hard. We thought that too back then. But when we pushed, the clinic threatened to drop us from their program. I blinked. They threatened you? We were desperate, he whispered. We wanted you more than anything. And they knew it. That hit me harder than I expected. The longing in his voice, the grief behind it. It didn't erase the secrets, but it made them hurt in a different way. I reached the final document, a letter, unopened, still sealed. What's this? I asked. Mom's face went pale. We were afraid to read it. I stared at them. For almost 30 years? Dad whispered. We were scared it would confirm our worst fear. My chest tightened. Which is? That you weren't mine, he said, voice breaking. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something warm crack through the pain. He loved me. Even in his silence, he loved me so much it terrified him. I slid my thumb under the seal and opened the letter. The paper inside was thin, the ink slightly faded. The clinic's letterhead stretched across the top. I read the first line aloud. Due to an internal audit, we have identified a potential discrepancy in specimen labeling on the day of your procedure. Mom covered her mouth. Dad sank into a chair. I kept reading, even though my hands trembled. The issue may not have impacted your treatment. However, we are required to inform you for transparency. Transparency. The irony nearly made me laugh. Then the next line. If you wish to pursue further testing, please contact our legal department.
No epalegi. No explanation.
Just a legal disclaimer and a door slammed shut. I flipped the page and froze. Attached was a second sheet. A list. 12 patient IDs. Dates. Notes. I scanned the names, heart pounding harder with each one. And then I saw it. Marcus Hale present for sample collection. Same day. My stomach dropped. He hadn't exaggerated. He hadn't speculated. He'd been there on the exact same day as my parents. His name was on a list they were never supposed to see. I looked up at my parents. You knew he was there. Mom shook her head frantically. We didn't. We never saw this list. But Dad looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Dad, I whispered. He dragged a hand down his face. Your mother didn't see it. She was asleep, recovering. I saw it on a desk when a nurse left the room. I glanced at it. His voice thinned. I saw the name. I didn't know what it meant. You should have told me. I should have told your mother, he whispered. My mom stared at him in shock. You kept this from me? He didn't look at her. He didn't look at me. He just stared at the list like it was a ghost he'd hoped would stay dead. I stood, pushing the chair back. My hands were shaking. You both hid things, I said quietly. Both of you. Mom started crying again. Dad closed his eyes. I walked to the door, heart pounding so loudly it felt like a drum in my chest. I needed air, space, distance. But just as I reached for the doorknob, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Same unknown number as before. You found the list. Stop now. You're not ready for the rest. My fingers went cold. They knew. They knew what I'd just read. And that meant only one terrifying thing. Someone wasn't watching from a distance. Someone was close. The moment I read that message, you're not ready for the rest. A cold ripple went through me so fast I thought I might pass out. I turned slowly, scanning the shadows outside the front windows, half expecting someone to be standing there. The porch, the street, the driveway, nothing. Just darkness and the soft hum of a streetlight flickering down the block. But someone knew I opened that folder. Someone knew I read the list. And someone was close enough to message me the second it happened. I stepped back inside. Mom asked, "What's wrong?" But her voice sounded far away, like it was coming from underwater. Dad stood up too quickly, knocking over his chair. What happened? I held up my phone. We're not alone in this. Someone's watching. Dad's face drained of color. Mom covered her mouth, eyes wide. For a moment, none of us breathed. Then Dad said, "We need to call the police." I shook my head. And tell them what? That someone sent a text? From a burner number? That 30 years ago a fertility clinic screwed up and now someone wants to keep it quiet. He hesitated. He knew I was right. "There's more," I added softly. Mom whispered. "What? What more could there be?" I looked at my father, my non-biological father, the man who raised me, who lied to me, who loved me, who hid the thing that was now consuming my entire identity. "You recognized his name," I said.
Markus Hale.
"You saw that list 30 years ago, and you remembered him." He didn't deny it. He just lowered himself back into his chair like his legs could no longer support him. "I didn't know who he was," he said. "I didn't know he mattered. I saw his name for 2 seconds before a nurse came back. I kept it to myself because I didn't want to scare your mother." Mom flinched like he'd slapped her. "You should have told me." "I know," he whispered. "And you should have told me," I said. He looked at me with eyes that suddenly looked so tired, so fragile. "I didn't want to lose you." The words hit something inside me, something I had been trying not to feel. Because even through the anger and betrayal, the truth was this: he loved me. That part had never been a lie. I sat down slowly. "Why didn't you get a DNA test back then?" "Because you were mine," he said, voice thick with emotion. "And I didn't want science telling me I didn't deserve to be your father." Mom reached for his hand, her tears silent now. "You should have trusted me. We could have faced it together." He shook his head. I was afraid. The room went quiet, heavy, the kind of quiet that makes it hard to breathe. Finally, I said, "The clinic had more discrepancies. Marcus told me they settled with families, hid things, covered their tracks." Dad swallowed hard. "We always suspected. And they threatened him," I added. "Someone told him not to pursue it." Mom looked at the front windows again, fear creeping into her posture. "Why now? Why after all these years?" I didn't know. But the messages, the timing, the way they came exactly when I opened the list, it all pointed to one conclusion. Someone was monitoring us. Dad pushed the folder toward me. "There's something else you should see." Inside the pocket was a photo. Not mine. Not my parents. A baby. Swaddled. Tag on the bassinet blurred with age. "What is this?" I asked. Mom wiped her face and whispered, "The clinic sent it to us with your paperwork." "This isn't me," I said immediately. The baby had dark, thick hair. I was born nearly bald. The birth bracelet had a number that didn't match any ID in the folder. Why would they send the wrong baby picture? Dad's jaw tightened. That's what scared me. That's why I thought maybe they mixed something up. More than just samples. The room felt like it tilted. "What are you saying?" I whispered. "I'm saying," Dad said slowly, "that the clinic wasn't just handling sperm. They were handling embryos. And some got mislabeled." My heart slammed against my ribs. "You think I was switched?" Mom shook her head rapidly. No, honey. They said the picture was just a clerical mix-up. A filing error." "But everything was a clerical mix-up," I snapped. "Everything they touched was broken or missing or switched or doctored." Dad leaned forward. "We don't know for sure, but I always had doubts. The way the nurse rushed. The way they kept moving paperwork around. The way they told us to leave the room." My voice came out barely audible. "You think they gave you the wrong embryo?" He didn't answer. Mom whispered, "We love you. Nothing changes that." But something inside me cracked anyway. My phone buzzed again. Mom jumped. Dad reached for it, but I was faster. A new message from that same unknown number. "Stop looking for him." Another buzz. "Start looking in the mirror." My hands went cold. My breath froze. I stared at the glowing screen. And in that moment, a horrifying possibility bloomed inside me. Dark, sudden, undeniable. Maybe the mistake wasn't just the sperm. Maybe it wasn't just the sample. Maybe it wasn't even Marcus. Maybe I wasn't who I thought I was at all. Someone knew something about me. Something I didn't. I didn't sleep. None of us did. We sat in the living room like three ghosts. Every lamp on. Every curtain drawn. Flinching each time the house creaked. The messages had hollowed something out of me. Something deep. I kept staring at my phone, half expecting another threat to appear, half dreading it. Around 4:19 a.m., Dad finally spoke. "We need to go to the clinic." Mom shook her head instantly. "They won't tell us anything. They barely did 30 years ago." I said nothing. My mind was too loud to speak. Images kept looping, Marcus's name on that list, the wrong baby photo, the buzzing message telling me to look in the mirror. Why would they say that? I whispered. Why would they say to look at myself? Neither of them answered. They couldn't. Dad reached for the folder again, flipping through pages like he'd missed something earlier. He paused on one form, a consent document, thick with fine print and smudged signatures. "This part," he murmured, pointing to a paragraph halfway down, "wasn't here when we signed it."
I leaned over.
"What do you mean?" He tapped a line that hadn't aged like the rest. The ink was too dark, too crisp, the paper too clean. It read, "In the event of anonymized donor substitution or necessary specimen replacement, the clinic reserves the right to maintain confidentiality to protect all parties." My skin went cold. "You didn't sign that." "No," he said. "We didn't." Mom covered her mouth. "That's not our handwriting. Someone had added it later. Someone had changed their records. Someone had rewritten the past." I stood abruptly. I need water. But the truth was I just needed to breathe. I walked into the kitchen, flipped on the light, and gripped the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. I caught my reflection in the microwave door. Blurred, distorted. Look in the mirror. What did that mean? I pulled out my phone, opened the DNA app, and zoomed in on my ethnicity breakdown. Something I'd barely noticed before. Something I brushed past because it didn't mean anything at the time. Except now it did. The percentages didn't match my parents' backgrounds. Not even close. I knew that since yesterday. But one number jumped out at me, a small slice I had ignored. Middle Eastern ancestry. Only about 6%. Not huge. Not central. Just unexpected. Except that neither of my parents had a single drop of it. And neither did Marcus. I whispered, "What the hell?" Dad walked in quietly. "What is it?" I showed him the screen. He scanned it slowly. His eyebrows drew together. "This wasn't in our family tree. Or your mother's. Or the samples they used." I swallowed hard. "So where did it come from?" He stared at me in a way that made my stomach twist. A way that said he was adding things up and didn't like the sum. "There was another donor," he whispered. "Someone they never told us about." Mom appeared in the doorway, pale and shaking. No, that can't be right. They promised us they didn't mix donations. They said they only used your father's sample." "They lied," Dad said simply. Mom looked like she might collapse. I turned back to the counter, gripping it harder. If Marcus wasn't the father, then why was he warned? Why was he threatened? Because he knew something, I thought. Because he saw something. Because he wasn't supposed to talk to me. My phone buzzed. All three of us jumped. It was a new notification from the DNA app again. A new relative match. My heart stopped when I saw the words. "Half-sibling match detected." A name appeared beneath it. Someone I had never seen before. Someone neither of my parents recognized. Someone who shared half my DNA. Mom whispered, "Oh my God." Dad looked sick. "This can't be happening." I clicked the profile. No photo. No location.
No bio.
Just a name, Nadine El-Rami. Age, 29. Born in a city 2 states away. And then I saw it, her conception year. The same year as mine. 3 months apart. My entire body went numb. There was a message attached to her match request. Just one sentence. They made a mistake with me too. I felt the world tilt. Another child. Another mix-up. Another life rewritten by the same clinic. And then, right as I started to process that, another message came through. This one from her. 5 words that made my breath stop completely. I know who he is. My fingers trembled as I typed back. Who? Her reply came instantly. Not Marcus. Someone else. I swallowed hard. Who? I typed again. This time she hesitated. 20 seconds. 40. Full minute. Then my phone buzzed. The man you think is your father? He was never involved. The clinic used a different donor. One they kept off the books. I stared at the text, heart hammering. Who? I typed a third time. The answer came. They called him Patient K. My pulse stopped. And he's still alive. My phone nearly slipped from my hand. Alive. Unknown. Hidden. And my real biological father. For a long moment, none of us spoke. My phone sat in my palm like it weighed 100 pounds. Patient K. A nameless man. A hidden donor. A ghost from a clinic that had been burying secrets for decades. And he was still alive. Dad sank into a chair like his legs had given out. Mom pressed her shaking hands to her lips. I stood frozen in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the message from Nadine like the letters were burning through the screen. Another buzz. Another message from her. You need to hear what I found. Call me. I didn't hesitate. I hit the call button, pacing the kitchen as it rang once, twice. Then a soft voice answered. Hello. Hearing her was like hearing an echo of my own fear. She sounded young, but not fragile. More like someone who'd been holding herself together for a long time. This is insane, I said quietly. I know, she replied. But you need to understand, your parents weren't the only ones who were lied to. Mine were too. And I've been digging for months. Why didn't we match earlier? I asked. I only uploaded my results last night, she said. I wasn't ready before. I rubbed my forehead. You said you know who Patient K is. Yes, she said. And the clinic didn't use him just once. They used him dozens of times. Possibly more. A dizzy wave hit me. Dozens? They called it a backup specimen, she continued. But from what I found, it wasn't backup. It was primary. They used him whenever they wanted faster success rates. He was their secret asset. I felt my blood run cold. That's illegal. It was 30 years ago too, she said. But they did it anyway. I leaned on the counter to stay upright. My mother slipped into a chair, staring at me through wide, terrified eyes. Dad just looked at the floor like the truth was too heavy to face head-on. Who is he? I whispered. He worked there, she said. Not as a donor. As a lab tech. My breath stalled. Otoy. One with almost no paperwork, no identified family, no medical records on file. He was never supposed to be a donor. But they used him anyway. I felt sick. Did he know? I don't think so, Nadine said. From what I found, he disappeared after an internal investigation. Some say he quit. Others say the clinic forced him out. No one knows. Dad stood abruptly. What the hell kind of operation were they running? Nadine continued like she hadn't heard him. They called him Patient K in all internal documents. And I found one of those documents. Her voice shook. My mother kept every paper from her treatment. I scanned one with a watermark. I ran it through a digital filter. K's ID was faint but still there. That's how I found his name. I closed my eyes, bracing myself. Tell me. A beat. Then, my father's ID matched yours. Same donor. Same man. I opened my eyes. So we're sisters. Yes, she whispered. We're sisters. My legs almost buckled. My mom gasped softly, tears slipping down her cheeks. Dad stepped closer to me like he wanted to catch me if I fell. I swallowed hard. What's his name, Nadine? What's Patient K's real name? She inhaled shakily. His name is Kamal. Kamal what? Another pause. Too long. Too heavy.
Kamal Hale.
My breath left my body.
Hale. Hale.
Oh my God, I whispered. He's related to Marcus. His younger brother, she said. That's why Marcus was warned to back off. He wasn't supposed to know. No one was. I stumbled back into the counter. My heart hammered so loudly I thought the walls might hear it. There's more, Nadine said, voice dropping. I think your parents were never meant to use your father's sample at all. The clinic was substituting without consent. They used Kamal intentionally. My stomach twisted. Why? Because his samples had the highest pregnancy success rate, she said. They wanted good numbers, happy clients, big donations, awards, funding. My voice broke. We were lab results. Yes, she said softly. We were. I could barely breathe. My thoughts splintered in every direction. Marcus, Kamal, the clinic, the threats, the wrong baby photo, the altered forms, the hidden donor clause. Everything pointed one direction. This wasn't incompetence. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. Nadine's voice trembled as she continued. He's still alive. Kamal. I found an address. I felt my heart leap and drop at the same time. Where? Before she could answer, my phone buzzed again. A new text. Same unknown number. Do not meet him. Another buzz. There are things you don't know about patient K. My chest tightened like a fist had wrapped around my lungs. I raised the phone to my ear again. Nadine. She inhaled sharply. You got a message, didn't you? Yes, I whispered. So did I, she said. 10 seconds ago. A chill wrapped around me like a cold hand. What did yours say? I asked. Her answer made every hair on my body stand on end. Stop digging, or you'll end up like his wife. I froze. His wife. The silence between us stretched, thin and dangerous. Nadine, I whispered. What happened to his wife? Her voice trembled. She disappeared. 28 years ago, right after he was fired. My breath hitched, and no one ever found her. For a few seconds, I didn't move. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. Nadine's words echoed through my head like a warning whispered through a locked door. She disappeared. 28 years ago, right after he was fired. No one ever found her. I felt something cold bloom in my chest. Fear, but deeper than fear. A kind of knowing. A sense that this story was never just about DNA or a clinic's mistake. Something darker lived beneath it. Dad paced the kitchen like he needed to move to stay sane. Mom clutched the edge of the table, staring at me with a kind of helplessness I'd never seen in her before. What happened to his wife? Dad asked again, voice cracking. What does she mean, disappeared? I put him on speaker. Nadine. Her voice came through, shaky but clear. Her name was Lila Hale, married to Kamal before he worked at the clinic. They lived 3 towns over. And one night, she just vanished. Vanished how? I whispered. They said she left, packed a bag, walked out. Except, Nadine took a breath. Her car was still in the driveway. Her wallet was inside. Her ID. Everything. She didn't take a thing. Mom covered her mouth. And Kamal? Dad asked. He said she needed space, Nadine said. Then he said she had depression. Then he changed his story again, said she ran off with someone. Nothing matched. A neighbor reported screaming the night before she went missing, but the police didn't follow up because Kamal's boss at the clinic vouched for him, said he was under stress, that he was a good man. I felt a slow, sickening dread twist in my stomach. So they believed him? I asked. There was no body, Nadine said. No evidence. Just a woman no one ever saw again. Dad sank into a chair. Mom whispered, Dear God. I swallowed hard. So you think he? I don't know what I think. Nadine cut in. But the clinic protected him. And then he disappeared too, not officially, but he left town. Started over. Went off the map. I felt my ribs tighten around my heartbeat. And you found his address? Yes, she said. An old one, but I think he still lives nearby. I found more traces. Utilities, P.O. box, a record of a parcel pickup last year. He's still around. He just doesn't want to be found. Dad stood suddenly. We're not going to meet this man. I stared at him. I have a right to know. No, he snapped, louder than I'd ever heard him. This isn't about a lab mix-up anymore. This is about a man with a missing wife and a clinic willing to cover for him. Mom grabbed his arm. Please calm down. No, he said, tearing his arm away. They lied to us. They used us. And now someone is threatening my daughter. My daughter. His voice cracked on the last words. Mom cried silently. And me? I just stood there, somewhere between sympathy and fury, my mind spinning too fast to land anywhere stable. My phone buzzed again. Nadine inhaled sharply. I got one too. We checked at the same time. Mine said, if you go near him, he won't be the only one who disappears. My throat closed. Nadine whispered, mine says the same. Dad grabbed my phone from my hand. That's it. We're going to the police. I snatched it back. And tell them what? Anonymous texts from people who could be anywhere. 30-year-old suspicions about a missing woman? They won't listen. He let out a broken, frustrated sound. Then the front porch light flicked on by itself. All three of us froze. Mom whispered, did someone turn it on? No, Dad said. It's motion activated. We stared at the door. No one knocked. No footsteps. No sound. Then something slid under the door. A thin envelope. Dad reached for it, but I grabbed his wrist. Don't. He hesitated, then nodded. Mom stepped behind us like she needed the wall at her back. I crouched, picked up the envelope, and slowly opened it. Inside was a single photograph. A man, dark hair, narrow eyes, sharp jawline, standing beside a woman whose face was partially turned away. She looked blurred, as if she'd moved at the last second. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, he isn't who you think he is. My hands shook. Dad whispered, that's Kamal. Nadine spoke through the phone. Can you send me a picture? I snapped a photo and texted it to her. She was silent for 10 seconds. Too long. Then, oh my God, she said. That's not his wife. I blinked. What? That's not Lila. I've seen photos of her. That woman isn't her. Then who is she? Nadine took a breath. I don't know. But she was with him. Dad stepped back from the photo like it burned. Mom whispered, why would someone send us this? The answer came before I even realized I'd spoken. Because someone wants us to know, I said quietly. But they don't want us to understand. Another buzz. A new message from the unknown number. This one was longer. You're closer than you think. Turn around. My heart slammed against my ribs. Dad grabbed my arm. Mom gasped. I turned, slowly, terrified. And there, through the front window, barely visible in the dark, was the silhouette of a man standing at the edge of the yard, watching us, not moving, not hiding, just waiting. For a moment, none of us moved. The silhouette stood at the edge of the yard like a shadow carved out of the night. Still, tall, unreadable. My mom let out a shaky breath. Dad stepped in front of us instinctively, his arm outstretched like he could shield me from whatever was standing out there. My phone was still on speaker. Nadine's voice came through, fragile and terrified. Is someone there? Yes, I whispered. The figure didn't step closer, didn't raise a hand, didn't speak. He just stood, letting the porch light illuminate the faint outline of a face I couldn't fully make out. Then he did something that froze every nerve in my body. He lifted one hand and pointed at me. Dad shoved me behind him. Stay back, he shouted through the window. But the man didn't move. Not forward, not back. Just stood there, pointing, as if he were identifying me, as if he'd been waiting. I grabbed my phone and pressed it to my ear. Nadine, what do I do? I'm calling 911, she said immediately. Do not open that door. Dad must have heard her, because he nodded and locked the deadbolt again, even though it was already locked. Then he reached for the curtains and yanked them closed. The moment the glass was covered, the room felt smaller, tighter, too quiet. Then, a knock. Not loud, not frantic, just one heavy, deliberate knock. Mom started crying silently, shaking her head as if she could will the sound away. Dad whispered, "Don't move." Another knock, and another, slow, even, rhythmic. I swallowed hard. Dad, what if it's him? He looked at me. If it is, we don't open that door. My phone buzzed with a new message from the unknown number. You're making a mistake. Then immediately another. He wants to explain. Explain what? Why he was used without consent. Why his wife disappeared. Why the clinic covered for him. Why someone warned us not to find him. Dad grabbed my phone. We're not listening to this. But before he could turn it off, another message came through. He didn't kill her. My blood went cold. How do they know what we're talking about? Dad looked toward the front of the house, then at every lamp, every light, every shadow, and it hit him at the same moment it hit me. Someone was inside the system. Our phones, our accounts, our cameras. Someone had been listening long before we realized. Dad unplugged the router so fast it sparked. Silence swallowed the room. The knocking stopped. We stood there, barely breathing, waiting for another sound. Instead, footsteps, slow ones, fading away into the yard. Then the distant purr of an engine turning over. Tires rolling across wet pavement. Then nothing. He was gone. But the fear he left behind stayed. 3 minutes later, police sirens flashed across the windows. 2 officers came inside, questioned the 3 of us, searched the yard, checked the street. They found tire marks but nothing else. No face.
No footage. No trace.
It's probably just a trespasser, one officer said. Someone messing around. Dad's jaw clenched so tight I thought it might snap. That man wasn't messing around. But the officer looked past him, already losing interest.
No crime, no proof, no urgência.
They left us with a case number and a shrug. When the house was quiet again, Mom whispered, "We can't stay here." And she was right. Every corner felt watched. Every window felt thin. I could almost feel the weight of eyes on the walls. We packed bags, quick, desperate ones, and drove to a hotel across town. The kind of hotel where no one asks questions and the hallways always smell like bleach and old carpet. Room 217. 2 beds. 1 flickering lamp. For a long time, none of us spoke. Then my dad sat on the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, and said the words I had been trying not to think. You have to decide if you want to meet him. My throat tightened. Tonight. No, he said. Not tonight, but soon. Because whoever is sending those messages, they're not going to stop until you choose. And running won't give you answers. Mom reached for my hand. We're scared, but we'll support you no matter what. I nodded, though the knot in my chest only tightened. After my parents fell into an exhausted sleep, I stepped into the hotel bathroom and closed the door. The mirror was fogged from someone's shower. I wiped it with my sleeve. Look in the mirror. I stared at myself. Really stared. The eyes that weren't my father's. The features that didn't match my mother's. The pieces of myself I'd always felt slightly disconnected from. Who was I? A daughter? A mistake? A secret science experiment? Or just me? My phone vibrated in my hand. A new message. Not from the unknown number. Not from Nadine. From Marcus. I'm safe. I know what's happening. And I know where Kamal is. I felt my breath catch. Another message came through, slower this time. He wants to see you. But you need to hear the truth from me first. Meet me tomorrow morning. Alone. My pulse pounded painfully. Alone. I stared at the screen, torn between fear and something else. Something deeper. A need for closure. For understanding. For identity. Dad's voice echoed in my mind. You have to decide if you want to meet him. I took one long breath. Then I typed back. Tell me where. He sent an address. A small cafe on the outskirts of town. I locked my phone. My reflection stared back at me. Haunted, scared, but steady. Tomorrow I would learn who I really was, whether I was ready or not.